Okay, so I promise that the next Gemara we'll learn. I'm going to change the pace a little bit. We've been doing a lot of intensive halacha for the last couple of weeks in Perek HaKoimetz in Menachos. So, as I promised, God willing, we're going to get to chapter in Sanhedrin, the last chapter, Perek Chelek. Kol Yisrael yesh lem Chelek l'olam haba. It's the opening Mishnah that all Jews have a share in the world to come. And that tractate, although that chapter, although it has some halacha related to the belief in the coming of Moshiach and other halacha stuff with regard to the coming of Moshiach itself, not just the belief in it, as we shall learn when we get there. But the bulk of Chelek is Midrashic, Haggadah. So it's a bit of a change of pace from what we've been doing till now. To be completely honest, since we had promised to do this, I didn't have proper time to do a proper preparation as I'd like to. So I didn't want to dive into it without having hands and feet, as they say, before we start. But what I have here in front of us is a combination of two things that help us. Number one, it's a Mishnah in this week's Perek Avos. So it's anyways good to learn. And it's Friday, so we can prepare with that. And also, as it turns out, it was an introduction that this learning will serve as a semi-introduction to the chapter Chelek, especially from the Hasidic perspective, which is how we're going to focus, God willing, as we learn the chapter. We're going to focus on the Hasidic interpretation of that chapter, as we've done in the past with Haggadah. And I wanted to prepare a proper introduction to Perek Chelek, which, God willing, we will do for Monday, but this also serves as a semi-introduction in understanding what reward and punishment is on its various levels, and specifically the level of Chassidus, how reward and punishment is viewed. Because ultimately, the coming of Moshiach, which is the bulk of what Perek Chelek talks about, what the Gemara talks about, is essentially a reward. Now, although we're not asking this question directly here, but what we're going to answer really is why, in the Rambam's view, the belief in the coming of Mashiach and resurrection of the dead, Tchisa Mesim, which is what the chapter directly begins with, which later leads to the discussion of Mashiach's coming. Although the truth is there are two different stages. First the coming of Mashiach and then the resurrection of the dead. And then perhaps even other stages according to the Rambam and others. So the Rambam writes that coming of Mashiach and Tchisa Mesim are one of the 13 principles. 13 principles of our faith. And there are those that, the Chassam Sofer included, who, although, of course, believe in complete faith in the coming of Mashiach and the resurrection of the dead, but don't necessarily agree with the Rambam that it's an ikr, that it's a primary. In fact, if you look at Rashi's wording, which we'll highlight a little bit more when we get there on Monday, right at the beginning of the chapter, which we're going to learn, the chapter Chelek, which opens up with Kol Yisrael yesh lem Chelek l'olam haba, all Jews have a share in the world to come, with the exception of one who says, exceptions of people who don't have a share in the world to come, which of course we'll talk about. But one of the exceptions are someone who doesn't believe that there is someone who does not believe in the who doesn't believe that the resurrection of the dead comes from Torah. And so Rashi elucidates and says it could be this person believes in the resurrection of the dead, but doesn't believe it's going to come from Torah. And therefore we say, what do we care for this guy's what do we care for his faith if it doesn't come from Torah, if it doesn't come from our faith? So it could be inferred from Rashi that the problem with the one who doesn't believe in the resurrection is not that he doesn't believe in the resurrection, but he doesn't believe in the proper interpretation of Torah. And that's why it's an ikr. That's why it's a primary fundamental. Because it's fundamental to understanding and properly learning Torah includes knowing how to extrapolate things that aren't explicit in Torah. And one of the big extrapolations from Torah itself, which is not explicit in the 5 books of Moshe, it's more explicit in the prophets, but not explicit in the 5 books of Moshe, but it's alluded to there, as we will learn when we get there. Someone who doesn't have that, he's missing a fundamental in the learning of Torah. That's not the way the Rambam sees it. The Rambam sees the resurrection of the dead as a fundamental in and of itself.
It's mainstream view. It's a culture cane. You have to know that believe in the resurrection and it comes from the Torah.
I know, I understand that, but I'm addressing specifically the issue as to why it's an ikr. Why is it an ikr? Not why it's a part of our faith. It's a part of our faith. There's a lot of things that are part of our faith.
Yeah.
In other words, the some sefer, for example, pares it down to much less.
Yeah.
Believing in God, believing in revelation at Sinai, and essentially that's it. Once you believe in revelation at Sinai, then everything else follows.
And Torah pepper. It's
And
part of it.
a part of revelation of Sinai being both the written Torah and the oral Torah. But once that's there, then everything else follows, right? But the Rambam says more than that.
That's right.
He says there's a list of 13 things that are all equally, in other words, the belief in revelation at Sinai is equal to the Rambam in the belief of the coming of Mashiach. So why is that? And not just believe in the coming of Mashiach, there's another detail within.
Mashiach was the right question a lot because the
Sorry?
Tchias Amesim you have the Eastern Mishnah Gemara, but the belief in Mashiach as losing all about that's not clear.
I'm not talking about losing, I'm talking about being ikr. That
Yeah.
is implied.
Yeah, it's implied because that's what it
It's implied, but it's true.
Yeah.
But so we're going to address that question here. Although I'm not asking it directly, but
Tchias Amesim is in the Gemara.
that's correct. But also, why it's an ikr? Why is it an ikr?
What's the question? It's
That's what we're going to kind of address here, at least in the light of Chassidus. Why it's an ikr? Even though we're not going to address that explicitly, but as we come to the end of this talk, at the end of this session, we will hopefully understand why Tchias Amesim in the light of Chassidus is such a central theme in Yiddishkeit, not just in the detail in our belief.
Because the Gemara just says it is.
Sorry?
The Gemara doesn't give the why. The Gemara says it is.
That's what I'm telling you. That's what I'm saying.
That's the difference.
That's why I said for Rambam, from Rashi, for example, he explains why. Why? Because it's indicative of a certain way of interpreting the Torah text, but not because of what
the ikr itself.
not because of what Tchias Amesim itself is,
Just the
only
interpretation.
because of its interpretation, because of its interpretive properties from the Torah. Whereas the Rambam seems to be saying that the actual belief in what's happening is in and of itself a foundation, and that's what I want to address now. Why is that?
Hear me out first. In the resurrection of the dead, what happens to the living people when they die? Will they be resurrected too? And how long?
We're going to get to that. We'll get to all of that, and I thought you were going to ask something else. But either way, once the resurrection of the dead is there, depending on what view you are, it's either eternal life on earth then, which means if you're living, you stay alive, unless there's other views which say that you return to the earth and then come back.
Yeah, they're different.
They're different views, but once the resurrection happens, that's why you're asking about after the resurrection, not pre-resurrection. But after the resurrection, in one view, there are a few views, but the two main views are, one view is that eternal life on earth, whatever that looks like, and the other view is that at that sometime after the resurrection of the dead, all living people, including those who were resurrected, this is the Rambam's view, Maimonides, will, I don't want to say die because it's not the correct word. They will, their souls will no longer require their bodies and thus live in this eternal spiritual bliss. So it's either eternal physical life or eternal spiritual life, whatever those two mean, and whether it's even a contradiction. And how you can reconcile those, perhaps we'll get to when we talk about that. But that's a good question. These are all questions we're going to address in the Gemara.
Yeah.
The chapter we're about to embark on Monday, God willing, is going to address all these questions.
One view is that they'll live a very long time and then go to Olam Haba, and those who were passed away will come back to experience the Mashiach
And then
the
go
mitzvahs,
to.
and then they also live a very long time and then go to Olam Haba, or some say live forever.
That's what I just described.
Yeah.
Either eternal life on
And there's
earth,
a view in the Gemara that will become
Or-
like Malachim.
or eternal life,
angels, yeah.
or eternal life after,
Yeah.
Eternal life of the soul, eternal life of the body.
The Rambam's view
Either
is
way.
that the life of the soul is more.
We're going to talk about that, God willing.
So that's
Okay.
why he has to
I don't want to be restricted to do one thing at a time.
We're going to talk about all of this, God willing, when we get there.
Yes.
Okay, so for now, let's get to this
Sorry?
this teaching
I
here.
have to have a talk with Hashem.
Okay. Sorry?
I have to have a talk with Hashem.
We have
I don't want to be like to do one thing at a time, like
Like an angel.
Like an
Yeah.
angel.
I don't know if that's what it means. It means an angel. Okay, we'll get to there when we get to learn this Gemara. We're going to get to all of this. Let's not jump the gun. But that's a very good question, and God willing, we will get to this.
Right. And
all of
by the way,
these-
very hotly debated by the early Talmud commentaries.
All
This-
the post-Talmudic commentaries. Well,
the commentators on the Talmud.
the early commentators on Talmud, like the first post-Talmudic. Yeah. Well, we will get to all this. Rasag, we'll get to all of this.
To go on them exactly, Ramban, it's very hotly debated.
Okay, so the Mishnah says in Avos, chapter 4, Mishnah 2. Ben Azai Omer. Ben Azai says, the same Ben Azai we mentioned yesterday, the one who expired after entering into some mystical experience, overexposed to divinity, and stayed there. The very same one. Omer, he says as follows: one should run enthusiastically to perform a mitzvah which is easy, and run away from doing a sin, even if you might think, oh, it's no big deal. Why? Mitzvah goyderes mitzvah, because one mitzvah leads to another. V'avera goyderes avera, and when one avera leads to another. Sheschar mitzvah mitzvah, for the reward of the mitzvah is a mitzvah. Sheschar avera avera, and the reward for avera is an avera. Okay, so it's a very nice Mishnah, but on the face of it, there's a couple of questions that need to be addressed, and we're going to address them on a few levels. The basic question that we're going to address here, the unasked question, is if the reward for the mitzvah is just doing another mitzvah, then why do mitzvah at all? Meaning to say, if I were told as a child going to school that your reward for coming to class on time is you get to come to the next class on time, so I'll say, okay, I'll stay home. And the punishment for getting to stay home is you get to stay home another day. Fine, so I'll stay home. That's all it is. Right? Usually, the reward for something is something I want in exchange for something that was a little bit difficult for me. So here, let's say the mitzvah is a little bit difficult for me. Right? So the reward should be some other thing that's going to incentivize me to do that mitzvah. And here we're telling you the reward is another mitzvah. What's the point of that? That's the unasked question, which we're going to answer on a number of levels. So first, on the simple and most basic level, from Rabbi Levi is a classic commentary in the Mishnah. Classic basic commentary in the Mishnah. He writes, a mitzvah, one mitzvah leads to another. And this is the way of the world. One who's in the mood, and he's in the, they call it groove. You get into the rhythm of doing a mitzvah. It becomes easy to do another. You're in the mind frame. You're in the mind frame of doing the right thing. So it goes, it flows. You're in the mind frame of doing something negative. One who begins on the path of transgressing. It's difficult to get out of it. And therefore, Rabbi Azai is basically saying, don't take the easy mitzvahs as lightly, and don't take the seemingly innocuous sins lightly. Because once you get into that mode of doing negativity, the spiral quickly devolves, and likewise, you're doing easy mitzvahs, doing the supposedly easy mitzvahs, which you think are, oh, no big deal, okay, I won't do it. No, do those. Get yourself into the habit of doing mitzvahs, because that will lead you down. The spiral will not devolve, but evolve or ascend. You'll climb the ladder very easily. It's a simple teaching. True, but psychological thing. You're in that framework. You're in, it's a difficult thing that a lot of times. Yeah, there's a difficult thing that when kids begin the path of misbehaving, and they're told by their teachers that they are misbehaving kids, it becomes very, very difficult to get themselves out of that mode. They think of themselves as bad kids, so they keep on behaving badly. So not on such a crass level, but adults the same way. Oh, I anyways do that, so I'll just keep on doing it. It's very difficult to get out of that mind frame.
Also the addiction phenomenon, that actually the human mind gets used to a certain level, it needs a higher level of stimulation in order to get the same satisfaction.
Like a thief, he starts off slowly.
Yeah, slowly.
Yeah.
And he just escalates.
Yeah. That's right. There's an expression that
like drugs, it's actually because the person can't stop because the mind is so wired now.
There's a line, I can't remember who the author of this line is, but there's a line which is that the person who's lost deep in the forest.
Yeah, can join us. It's a light.
Come and join us.
Light topic.
It's a light person.
It's light and heavy at the same time. But
the tree falls in the forest.
Now,
you get into it.
Someone who gets lost in the forest, and he's miles and miles off the road. It began because he only went 2 inches off the road.
Yeah.
Right? There's a line like that. But then he adds a word and says "va'od" in addition. Now, this word in addition, he answers another question really, because the way the Mishnah reads in its literal sense, it seems like the second statement is a reason for the first. The reason why you should heed this small mitzvah, and the reason why you should stay away from a sin, is because the mitzvah leads to a mitzvah. And because the reward is mitzvah, the reward of a mitzvah is mitzvah. The Bachelor breaks it up and says, do this simple mitzvah because it'll get you on the path of doing mitzvahs and it'll lead you to. Now, va'od, in addition to that, separate statement, schai mitzvah, the reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah. So where's the answer to our question, which was, if the reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah, then why not just not do mitzvahs at all? If that's the reward for it, and mitzvahs are inconvenient for me, and my reward is going to be to do another mitzvah which is inconvenient for me, why am I doing it at all? So he answered by saying, Shemina Shemayim Misayim, Mazminim Biyad Bisha Asa Mitzvah, from heaven, they provide help and they provide opportunities for the one who's doing mitzvahs. Should Shiyasa Acheres could do another mitzvah, they lost the schar stand to give the reward for both. Meaning to say, the Mishnah isn't saying that the reward for your mitzvah is another mitzvah. Your reward comes in the world to come, life after death. But if you do a mitzvah now, you will be provided the opportunity to do another mitzvah and thus compound your reward. So it's compounded interest. Not that the reward is the other mitzvah, but if you do one mitzvah and then, besides the fact that you're now in the habit of doing mitzvahs, and therefore you will do more, but moreover, Hashem will actually provide you more opportunities to do more, and that way your reward will become compounded. You'll end up piling more and more reward, which you will get later. So it's a simple reading of the Mishnah, but it's actually not exactly quite literal, because the literal meaning is the reward for a mitzvah is a mitzvah. Here he's saying no, the reward for the mitzvah is in the world to come. But in addition to that, you will be rewarded with more opportunities to acquire more reward by doing more mitzvahs. And the same thing is true in the inverse. Pirush Acher, another reading, says the Bartanura. You have Rabbi from Bartanura. Sheschar mitzvah, the reward for mitzvah is a mitzvah. Shekol masha oidom mishtaker, misanig basiyas mitzvah. All the reward you gain while you're doing the mitzvah, meaning to say, the enjoyment that you have in doing a mitzvah, the geschmack you get in doing a mitzvah, which in and of itself is a kind of reward for the mitzvah, nechshav loy lemitzvah fnasmai. That itself is considered a mitzvah. And therefore you get double reward. Reward for the actual mitzvah you did, and for the joy, the pleasure that you got out of doing the mitzvah. Meaning like this: schar mitzvah, the reward for the mitzvah. Meaning, the enjoyment you get out of the mitzvah, that too is a mitzvah. So if you do a mitzvah with a sense of enjoyment, now there's double reward. Reward for the actual act, and then reward for the geschmack, for the satisfaction, for the enjoyment you put into it. Why are you getting a reward for the enjoyment? It's rather simple. Hashem wants to connect to you not just with your hands, but with your whole being.
With the heart especially.
Your heart especially. Hashem wants you to be part of it. So if you did the act dry, without feeling, so you technically checked the box, you did what you had to, but you weren't there. You were somewhere else. So you get reward for what you did. But when you enjoy it, and so it means you've invested yourself in it. You've studied about the mitzvah, you've inspired yourself about the mitzvah, whatever it is you've done to get yourself into the actual mitzvah, not just in act, but in feeling, then you get rewarded for that too. So schar mitzvah, the enjoyment you invested in the mitzvah is a mitzvah. And thus are rewarded for both.
The same is true for the Aveira.
And the same is true for the verse. The enjoyment of doing the sin. Okay.
You pay for the enjoyment too.
One level.
Interesting, in secular we don't do that. Secular law, we just say, you do a crime, you just pay for the crime. You don't pay for the enjoyment.
But the truth is that when it comes to halacha, when it comes to halacha, and it comes to one human judging another, we don't measure your geschmack, your enjoyment. A court will not measure how much you enjoy doing your sin or how much you didn't enjoy doing the sin. So Hashem has a different thing. Hashem knows people's hearts. Yeah. He can do that. But even in Jewish law, Ein l'dayin ela masha ein avrois, the person can only judge what he sees. So this is reserved specifically for Hashem to decide how and who and in what way was someone invested in their mitzvah. Which leads to another point, which is the Rambam's famous line about the pasuk which says Kel de'es Hashem, God is the God of knowledges, and that God is the only one who knows what's what. And therefore the Rambam says the quantity and quality of reward for each individual mitzvah is dependent on the quantity and quality of each individual person, and thus nobody can tell you what reward and punishment you are getting. Nobody. So even when the Gemara says a formula, which is interesting to note, especially as we get to Perek Chelek, where it's going to talk about reward and punishment for people doing certain things and for people believing certain things, it's important to remember that even when the Gemara gives a standardized punishment for XYZ behavior, XYZ belief, or XYZ sin, it's only it's the marker. It doesn't tell you that each person actually reached that marker. Because each person's conditions, because Hashem knows the heart of each person, Hashem knows the circumstances of each person, the conditions as to whether or not they actually qualify for that marker varies from person to person. So just because the Gemara gives a standard punishment, says everybody who believes this gets that, doesn't mean every person you know who believes that actually will get that. It's possible there are conditions in their life where Hashem says, no, exception for this person. Again, for the same reason here, like the same thing, similar to Only Hashem knows what kind of gishmak, what kind of enjoyment you get out of your mitzvah, that you've invested in your mitzvah, and therefore to reward you accordingly. But a judge in a court can only judge what he sees. Did you do it or not do it? How you behave, how you felt about it? We can't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's all enough to mean, like for a radical, not a bezdin, but in a moral sense, you look at a person with tshuva, as two people
Yes, to be able to
the same
understand.
avera,
Yeah.
one treats one way, one the other way.
Yeah.
And then there's what is called the mens rea, which is the intention. Was there an intention to commit a crime?
Yeah, so that's the second one. Yeah.
So there is
Don't say
a
for enjoyment though. Let's say if the person steals something and he enjoys it. Then
in Jew.
Well, you do check though if the person has any type of remorse for what he did. Also.
So
for punishment, remorse.
in halacha, remorse in a court is difficult to actually measure. We don't have that, but intent we do have sometimes. Into
Of course, yeah.
Amazing shogeg, we do have intent involved, and that only works with witnesses who are there at the time of the act,
And it's
not by his word.
It's with remorse, just like in Yiddishkeit, you see, was there tshuva on the part of the person? For example, a person in prison, they'll tell you, for example, after a while, what was he doing in prison afterwards? He tried to help people, that he worked, that he decided that he would change his life entirely.
So I don't want to go off a little bit, but in halacha it's a little bit different, because in halacha,
Yes.
the punishment itself, quote unquote, is supposed to be the impetus for the tshuva.
Exactly.
So, for example, even someone who makes it all the way to capital punishment, it's not as if we say, "Are you remorseful?" And if he says yes, we get him off the scaffold.
Right.
It's the reverse. You are about to go down the scaffold. You should do tshuva,
Exactly.
right? Because the same thing is true of any other punishments in Torah. It's supposed to be the impetus for tshuva, not the.
That's a spiritual element. That's a.
But even in the halachic sense, this is even the halachic sense. But anyway, that's a little bit of a sidebar.
That being retributive justice, ensuring that the justice is able to, in some way, rehabilitate the person, even if you're following through with the punishment, but there's rehabilitation through the sense of tshuva.
Yeah.
But that's much more for the world to come.
For the world to come,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, depends. Well, depends what the punishment is. If it's malchus, if it's capital punishment, depends what it is.
You can't do it. This world is
Anyway,
but world to come. Yeah, exactly.
We may touch a little bit on that when we get to Perek Chelek, but not as much as previous chapters in Sanhedrin, which we're not doing, at least not in this
For
occasion.
a secular world, they don't accept that as a law. So they have to read, but in this world, you can't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we-
Okay. Let's go forward here.
Yeah.
So we have two more levels of interpretation. The next one comes from two different texts together, and then finally the third interpretation will be from Tanya, and that's going to be our kind of introduction to Perek Chelek, this chapter which we're going to begin on Monday, God willing. So this comes from Medrash Shmuel. He writes as follows: V'yesh mefarshim, those explained. He has a list of different interpretations. This is one of them. Sheschar mitzvah. When it comes to the reward of a mitzvah, asiyas ha-mitzvah, the doings, not the doing my doing, but what is done as a result of my mitzvah, hischar is the reward. Lo asiyas mitzvah cheres, not the doing of another mitzvah. Right? That was our question.
Mm-hmm.
You inconvenience yourself doing a mitzvah and you get rewarded by being required to inconvenience yourself again. She said, no, it's not another mitzvah. It's the doings of that mitzvah that is the reward. The doings of that sin, he unshares the punishment. We're not talking about another avera. That would just be a great life. I do one avera and a reward of another avera, fantastic, pile it on. Right? She says, no, it's the actions and the accomplishments of the very avera you did is the punishment. How's that? This is unbelievable words. Reb Marash, in a famous discourse, which he elaborated on over about a year and a half, talks a lot about this idea. There's no greater reward on a mitzvah, than the fact that he can consider it unto himself, also in that he did it, and through that he came closer to Hashem. That's it. There's no greater reward than the knowledge that in this action I became closer to Hashem. And my reward will be delayed at some other time when after I've been laid to rest. But the biggest reward is the result of that mitzvah. What's the result of the mitzvah? The knowledge that I've come closer to Hashem. There's no greater reward. So run to every small mitzvah because the reward of the mitzvah is in that act. Sischar mitzvah. The reward of the mitzvah is in that mitzvah that you just did. You became closer to Hashem. What's greater than that? Nothing. And therefore, in the reverse as well, There's no greater punishment Allah on the sin than the fact that he can consider it loyal unto himself, also of what he did, distance himself from Hashem, as a result of that sin, and moreover, and by distancing himself from Hashem, Hashem becomes distant from him, and God forbid, he can be not punished as in God will send calamity, but if a person distances himself from Hashem and he's at the whims of nature aren't very kind. And in life after death, when his soul departs from the body, he's sentenced himself to disconnect from Hashem there too, in purgatory. So but the reward mentioned here, it's the world to come, not in this world. But what's the reward here is the knowledge that you're closer to Hashem, and the punishment here is the knowledge that you distance yourself from Hashem.
It's a beautiful example of a child, for example, that not because he feels pride, because he just did something for his tata, but just because the fact is, I'm so grateful that my tata loves me so much. So
Yeah.
the beauty of the love that he feels even more so. Not, the father always loved him, but he feels the love even more so because of the fact that he felt that he did something for his father.
That's right. So here we have a deeper level of interpretation. Not merely there's a previous interpretation where you're trying to compound the reward you're getting in the world to come, but here it's talking about the reward comes later, but how you appreciate the mitzvah here in this world.
Yeah, like that. Actually, the reward comes in this world as well. Because when you do a mitzvah for Hashem, you actually establish a bond between you.
That's what
and
he's talking about.
And that, no, not the mitzvah, but it goes in the
Oh, the
future
conclusion line is about
in this world as well. Like the closer you are to Hashem, the more opportunities to get close to Hashem.
So,
and similarly, so
depends
it's true the word's the world to come, but also in this world.
Okay, I want to get that, but it depends how you interpret the word reward. The Shalom talks about this, but there are different ways of interpreting the what reward and punishment mean. Is reward and punishment compensation or result? Meaning, if I painted your home and you paid me for my time, then I've inconvenienced myself for you, and you pay me with money. So I don't care for the paint in the house, I just care for the money you're going to give me. So it's compensation. It's one way of looking at reward and punishment. And this is, so far, the way it's been seen to be looked at now. Even in this last interpretation, where that's why he says that there's rewards in the world to come, it's not the mitzvah in and of itself that you're appreciating. It's that you know that through this act, you're closer to Hashem. So if it wasn't tefillin and it was chopping wood, fine, chop wood if that's how you get closer to Hashem. The reward, compensation, that's what he means to say that compensation comes later. If you're thinking of reward as compensation, that comes in the world to come. What do you appreciate now? The fact that you connected to Hashem through this act. That's not your compensation per se. But now there's a different way of looking at reward. And that if I painted my own house, so if I painted my own house, the reward is not the money I get for it, because no one's paying me. It's the fact that now I have a clean house.
The money you save.
The money I saved.
But Rabbi also...
No, it's also the fact that I have a clean house now. So the reward is not just a compensation for my inconvenience, but it's the result of my actions.
That's actually both. It's compensation and reward.
In that sense, correct. And then and that's the next interpretation.
You don't pay tax, and also you don't.
Yeah, and that's the next interpretation we're going to get to, is understanding reward as not compensation for your inconvenience, but rather the net result of your actions.
Yeah, result, exactly.
That's the reward, and that's going to lead to the way Chassidus understands what reward and punishment is, and as we get to the next interpretation, what Moshiach is all about. But before we get, let's see the world to come. Yeah.
And Rabbi, wouldn't it be because of that beautiful interpretation, because of the fact that in Hebrew, avodah is also worship, work and worship.
Yeah.
So the very moment while we're painting the house, it's not because of the schar necessarily, because of what we're going to receive. You say, I painted that house. The beauty of it, it's a vocation. I made something beautiful for them.
Yeah.
I made something. The same way, for example, when you do something to, it's not the salary you're getting here, but I'm so grateful I could impart this because I'm living the moment of being able to share the loveliness of the beauty of what I'm imparting.
Right, and there's the beauty of it. So the more you appreciate the mitzvah itself, the more you see the reward in the mitzvah itself, in that you're appreciating what you're actually accomplishing. Yeah.
In fact, that aspect of the reward is all psychological. Sure,
It's psychological.
But you get the joy of attaching.
That's what the Medrash Shmuel is saying. The knowledge that you're connecting to Hashem, but the reward itself, the compensation, he says, is reserved for the world to come.
The truth of the matter is that,
Right?
Yeah,
that's why he's splitting between the two things.
But
I want to see.
enjoyment
Is itself a reward, but he's saying it's not the ultimate reward. There's not the real compensation.
It's a partial reward. It's like
But let's see the next
dividend
interpretation where even the compensation of the world to come is result, not compensation, even the world to come. So let's see. This comes from Maggid of Mezrich, which is the father of all Hasidic movements, the Baal Shem Tov's successor, and he's the one who's the teacher of the Alter Rebbe and the teacher of his contemporaries, and his students began all the dynasties of the various different Hasidic groups. And he says like this: "V'zeu yischar mitzvah mitzvah." This is the meaning of the Mishnah, which we just read. The reward for mitzvah is a mitzvah. What means to say, "Shar schar shel mitzvah she'osim elam haza." The reward for the mitzvah we do in this world, who ba'osim mitzvah asa atma, is in that very mitzvah ba'olam ha'elyon, in the spiritual world. Whenever a person does an act, any act in this world, there's a parallel action in the world to come. So you put on tefillin here, then up in some heavenly sphere, there are divine revelations that are directly correspondent to the act of your tefillin. And that is the reward. V'sham yesh tanim mimeno, and that's what you enjoy. L'fi shekan, here in this world, in the tanim mimeno, he doesn't appreciate the divine revelation of that mitzvah. Because here the divine energy is contracted and packaged in the lavush, in a garment, which is like a packaging of a physical mitzvah, a box of leather. But in the world to come, you can actually appreciate it. So let's analyze this a little bit deeper. One of the ways in which we refer to the world to come, life after death, is Olam Haemes, the world of truth. So truth is knowing the truth of one's actions is either one of two things, either very painful or very enjoyable. So if you imagine a very simple example, you see someone in the morning and you give him a nice smile and you say, good morning. It's a simple act. You didn't think twice about it, not before, not after. All you said was you smiled and you said, good morning. But if you had a bird's eye view and you knew what the person was feeling before you saw him, what happened to the person last night? And maybe he had a bad night, he got into a fight with this one, or this or that, and that day he was planning on the worst things, God forbid, and you told him good morning, and you reminded him that humanity is good, and reminded him that he's a part of humanity, and that he has also a sense of goodness, and you changed the course of his day and perhaps his life. How would you enjoy that moment now? Immensely. Before it was a nothing good morning, and now the good morning is a whole everything. So when you see the truth of the moment, it's very, very pleasurable. It's very enjoyable. Now in the inverse, God forbid, you said something not nice to a guy in the morning, and what did you do to his day? How much pain would you feel in knowing the truth of that action? When it comes to the world to come, it's that compounded by immeasurably on two accounts. Number one, it's not merely a question of the result that happens in this world. You say good morning to someone and it resulted in something beautiful in this world. But as he says it here, each mitzvah has a corresponding divine revelation. So if the mitzvah is a connection to Hashem, and each mitzvah has its unique flavor in that connection to Hashem, and when you get to the world to come and you appreciate and know that connection, there can't be any more joy than that. And when, same thing in the inverse, a person does a sin, it disconnects from Hashem, and each sin its own flavor. When you get to the world of truth and you appreciate and feel that disconnect, how much pain is there? It's immense.
That's Rambam says that.
Sorry?
Rambam says exactly that.
Yeah.
That's not the Gehenna is when you realize that, whoops.
Yeah.
Missed out on
There was a second account I want to say.
That's explained. That's not because it's.
Yeah, no. This idea that, I think there was two accounts. One is that there's can't remember the second point I want to make about this, but I can't remember why it's different, why it's even more than just saying good morning to somebody. First of all, it's connection to Hashem.
You're helping someone as well.
Oh, and here's the other thing. If you were to find out that that in your good morning you
a
whole chain of events that was very positive, so the enjoyment you have in the knowledge of what you did. In the world to come, you actually re-experience what you did, but now you re-experience it with all of its truth. So the joy and therefore the pain, if that was the kind of act, is also immeasurably greater than just knowing what you did, because you re-experience all of it. And that's the way, from all the opinions, this is the way Chassidus chooses to understand the reward and punishment.
But the language says ein lo tanuk. You do get tanuk in this world, not the same degree as world to come.
It's not the same degree. That's why I just finished explaining. It's not just the degrees of enjoyment. It's qualitative of a different kind. Meaning, so even the enjoyment you described in Medrash Shmuel, where you the knowledge you know that you connected to Hashem, is not of the same quantity or quality of that kind of reward.
As I say, ein lo, there is a tanuk. but not the same degree.
When you get to the Tainug there, the Tainug you out of here will be like Aimloi.
Yes, that's Rambam
That's
as well.
the point.
I'm saying in this world, there's
Okay.
as well. The actual connection you can experience it.
Truth is that the Rebbe Marash actually says that the knowledge of connecting to Hashem can and should be such a deep pleasure that it's even more enjoyable in the world to come.
Yeah, that's okay.
Rebbe Marash writes about that
at
also.
least in this world.
But anyway,
as well, yeah.
okay, so now we get to finally the last interpretation of this mission that we're talking about Mashiach's coming. And this will frame the Hasidic way of understanding the chapter as we go forward. So this comes from chapter 37 in Tanya. Of course, chapter 37 follows chapter 36. And in chapter 36, the Alter Rebbe lays out, based on the famous Medrash that Hasidus quotes everywhere, as to what is the purpose of creation and what was the purpose of Torah mitzvahs. What does Hashem want out of all of this? We can talk hours about this, but let's just to keep it as simple as possible. The questions Hasidus address in general are not so much questions of why, but questions of what. And what I mean is, so far as I know, Hasidus doesn't ask the question, how do you know God exists? The Rambam does deal with such questions, and other philosophers do, but Hasidus does not deal with that kind of question. So far as I know, I haven't seen it written anywhere. Hasidus deals more with the question of, what is God? What is He? And likewise, when it comes to purpose for creation, you don't ask, why did Hashem create the world? Why did He create the world? He wanted to. There's no reason to give explanation. The question that Hasidus addresses is, hear me out. In Hasidus, the real question is, what do you want from your world? In other words, all of the explanations you can possibly give to explain why Hashem decided to do something don't match up if you understand that God Himself created all the conditions for which those reasons make sense. You're using a certain set of logic to explain reasons for why God created the world. Those sets of logic He created. So to use those as a paradigm for why He did something is again foolish. You're always going to be limited to your framework, and thus you cannot impose that on the divine. What you could ask is, now that the world is here, well, what do you want with it?
But Rambam did ask the question.
I understand that. So say Hasidus doesn't go that route.
The answer, of course, is that it only goes
So
far.
in understanding,
You always have a limit.
and therefore the real question that Hasidus wants to address is not why, but what. What do you want from your world? Now that it's here, what do you want from it? And once we know what you want from it, now we can ask a bunch of whys. Well, if this is what you want, then now why is it this way? Oh, because that leads to your purpose. So in other words, once we know what your purpose is, now we can say this is why you created it in that way, this is why the world runs in this way, and this is why that happens, all to lead to your purpose. What is your purpose? And the way Hasidus understands it from the Medrash, from the famous Medrash, is Hashem wanted to make a dwelling place for Himself here in this world. In very simple language, Hashem wanted to create a space of otherness, a place where His presence is not obvious, where people where creations, us included, perceive ourselves as separate from Him, and we should discover Him. That's the truth of a relationship. It's two people who can discover each other. I don't have a relationship with my hand. It's just me. So the same way Hashem doesn't have a relationship with His angels. They're just an extension of His divine revelation. There's no relationship. But in a place where there's people who have free choice and who can choose not to, that's where real relationships are made. And thus a dwelling place here in this world, which in parentheses tells you something beautiful. The fact that you can fail is not a glitch in the system. That's what makes you unique. If you couldn't fail, you'd be like an angel. We wouldn't need you. We have millions of those angels. Sorry?
Then you couldn't succeed, like it would be behemoth. So we're in between.
That's right. So, but the very fact that you could fail and sometimes do is not a glitch in the system. That's what makes you unique and that's what makes you valuable. So now here comes in chapter 37 another a very powerful teaching from the Alter Rebbe. He says like this: this ultimate purpose of making this world a home for Hashem through our free choice, as we just described, which culminates and bring in the Moshiach Mashiach, in the time of the coming of Mashiach. That's when Hashem's presence will be in this world. That's when we'll have accomplished that. The Tchiyas HaMesim, and on a deeper level with the resurrection of the dead, as we shall explore, Shehu, which that time is the Messianic era, and Tchiyas HaMesim is Gilui Oren Sof Baruch Hu, B'Olam Hazeh, is the revelation of the Infinite One on this physical world, Hagash, this physical world. Taloi is dependent, the accomplishment of this purpose, b'ma'aseinu in our work, b'avodaseinu in our service, kol zman meshech hagalus, throughout all the length of exile. What he's telling you is that the coming of Moshiach and the Tchias HaMesim is not something which is unrelated to what you're doing. You do what you have to. I've heard this line 1,000 times. What's Chabad busy with Mashiach all day? You do what you have to, and when Hashem wants to bring Mashiach, he'll bring Mashiach. That's not the way Chassidus sees Mashiach. Mashiach is the net result of everything we've been doing for the last 1,000 years, and therefore, of course, we're obsessed with Mashiach coming. Which is why, if you open up our prayer book, we make reference to Mashiach in our Shemona Esrei some 19 times in his various different forms. I don't get the exact number right, but many, many times throughout our the most prominent of them is the Shiosel Kvini Kol Hayom. For your salvation I long for all day, not every day. Kol Hayom, all day. What's that all about? Because if Mashiach is the result of what I'm doing, then everything I do, I'm thinking, well, is this going to be helping the coming about of this purpose of God's presence on earth, known as Mashiach, or is this going to distance that reality? So everything I do is related to, is it bringing Mashiach closer, or God forbid the opposite? Number one. Number two, the Alter Rebbe adds here, Kozman Meshech HaGolos, throughout the entire length of exile. And therefore, it's not just our actions that led to Mashiach's coming, but all of history. So the way Chassidus views all of history is that the entirety of history, especially Jewish history, is a slow progression to the coming of Mashiach. And therefore, in the study of history through the eyes of Chassidus, they'll talk about how the first temple accomplished XYZ revelation. Each part of history playing its role in the slow progression towards the coming of Mashiach in this whole length of history.
It could have been a fast progression, but unfortunately because of our sins.
Whatever Hashem's calculations are, I don't know, but that's why I think that's why we'll talk about that. Yes, that's why I said the more important question, not the why, but the what. In other words, why Hashem had it this way, I don't know, but what we are doing in this process, that is our business, so that we know where we are and where we're going. And here comes the interpretation of our Mishnah. Because the reward for the mitzvah, not the world to come, the life after death, as we've been learning till now, or some psychological experience we have now, but life on this earth, Mashiach's coming, which is the ultimate reward, is the direct result of the mitzvah itself. Mitzvah was the mitzvah itself. Why? Because in the doing of the mitzvah, the person draws down and elicits Gilui Ein Sof Baruch Hu, the revelation of the divine, from above to below, from a place where Hashem is distant to Hashem's close, to invest itself in the physical world, in the mitzvah, in the act, in the tefillin, or in the mezuzah. In some physical matter which, prior to you doing that mitzvah, was under the auspices of what's known as klipas noiga, which he explains earlier in Tanya, we won't get into that. And that's what it lives from. So before a person does the mitzvah with tefillin, the leather derives its life from what's known as klippa. Sheheim, which this klippa is what's responsible for kol advar matarim and mutarim, all the permissible things, shenas ben mitzvah, through which you do the mitzvah. So palm tree, which you do make into a lulav, or an esrog, which you make into a citrus thing, which you make into an esrog.
Or a cow.
Or cow, masiyas kagon klaf, tefillin, like the leather of tefillin, which you've now turned into tefillin and mezuzah or sefer Torah, etc. So, and this says out there is the meaning of the Mishnah, which says that the reward for the mitzvah is the mitzvah, is that all the mitzvahs we're doing are slowly building this world of Mashiach's coming. And this will frame for us the chapter we're going to get to. We'll talk about Mashiach's coming, which also explains why. So the opening Mishnah of, okay, we'll continue with that, God willing, on Monday. How this, what we just taught, connects actually to the very opening Mishnah of the first chapter. But for now, at least let's understand and appreciate that the way we're going to learn about Mashiach's coming in the coming chapter is not so much as an unrelated reward or an unrelated act that God decides to do on His terms, but rather ought to be, and in truth is, the net result of what we are doing. So, and therefore, to answer the opening question, why is it that the coming of Mashiach and Tchias HaMesim is an ikar in Torah, not to the detail? Why is it that the belief in Mashiach is in and of itself a foundation of our faith? Now we have the answer, because the ultimate purpose. It's not a side thing. Like, for example, let's say in theory a person didn't believe in heaven and hell. Okay, you can still do Torah mitzvahs. Everything is fine. You still believe in revelation at Sinai. What's really missing in there? Person doesn't believe in prophecy. There's foundation missing. Then he doesn't believe in the communication of the divine with our world. That's a problem. Person doesn't believe in life after death. Okay, so maybe he's lacking a detail in our faith, but the foundation of our faith is missing. But when it comes to Mashiach's coming, yes. If he doesn't understand that everything we're doing is not aimlessly, but there's a purpose here. There's an ultimate goal. There's something we're working towards in building and deepening our relationship with Hashem, which culminates in the coming of Mashiach, the purpose for which Hashem created us. Hashem gave His Torah. Hashem created His world. Hashem created all worlds is for this purpose. So understanding that and appreciating that is a fundamental in every mitzvah you do. The fundamental there is this act leads to the becoming of Mashiach
Through tikkun olam.
through perfecting our world. And moreover, even someone who died 1,000 years ago and did a bunch of mitzvahs, his mitzvahs were also part and parcel of the world that we live in, part and parcel of building the world that we live in, and we are building on his behavior to then bring the coming of Mashiach. So everything, Kol Meshech Zman HaGolus, that the entirety of the length of exile, all of this was part of the process of Mashiach's coming, and therefore it is a foundation, and specifically the resurrection of the dead. Think of this. Moshe Rabbeinu has been in heaven for how many years now?
3,000
Some 3,000 years. And our sages tell us that Yelch Machayel El Choyel, that the souls are constantly climbing higher and higher heights. So for 3,000 years, Moshe Rabbeinu is climbing higher and higher and higher spiritual heights. Then we're going to schlep him back into a body. It's torturous. Therefore, we must say that the revelation of godliness that is experienced when finally the purpose for everything is fulfilled is deeper than the highest of the highest possible world to come in Gan Eden. Has to be. Otherwise, why are we dragging him back down here?
No, but some say because to do the mitzvahs.
It's so painful. Leave him there.
The Ram raised the question. He holds all of the main things. Why come back here at all?
Which correct. Which is why Chassidus is actually the view that Ramban in this case.
I know, but
That's why Chassidus takes the view that the ultimate purpose is the world here,
right.
and that's the ultimate connection. And in such that what makes it deepest is precisely the fact that you're fulfilling the purpose. Till now, even though the Magda message said, as we learned before, that life after death is the result of your actions and knowing the truth, and knowing the truth is either painful or pleasurable. But there's something much deeper, and that is the experience of the purpose and culmination of what you did. Not just the truth of what you did, but what you've accomplished, and living out that accomplishment. And that's here in this physical world. That's the coming of Mashiach, and that's why it's such a foundation in our faith. It's a central tenet of our faith. And God willing, on Monday, when we get to the chapter describing all of this, we'll learn it through the prism of this understanding, although I'll do my legal duties, that there are many other ways to understand every line in Torah, including what we're going to go forward with. So have a wonderful Shabbos, everybody.